Carrie killed off a character from the Stephen King novel. And it works. Carrie is a classic in the horror genre. And considering the novel comes from the horror king himself, Stephen King, it's not exactly hard to see why. The story follows a bullied and lonely teenage girl named Carrie White who discovers she has telekinetic powers, allowing her to exact revenge on those who torment her at her high school prom. It's one of King's best and most unique works, even more impressive when you consider it's also his very first, as it's told through a series of newspaper clippings and interviews of townsfolk. The book was a huge success for King and launched his writing career, a success that was only furthered when it was made into a 1976 movie by director Brian De Palma. Playing Carrie is Sissy Spacek, who is absolutely entrancing in the role, and makes Carrie into someone the audience feels for and sympathizes with, even after the prom massacre. While De Palma's Carrie is considered one of the most faithful King adaptations, it makes a major change to the fate of one particular character, Miss Collins, Betty Buckley. It may seem like an unfair deviation in her story, but changing Miss Collins's fate allows the movie to more deftly explore the themes that King sets up in his novel. Who is Miss Collins in Carrie? Miss Collins is the gym teacher at Carrie's high school. She's a bit harsh with her students, but we see a warmth within her when she is with Carrie. She's admittedly just as baffled as the rest of the girls over Carrie's distraught nature at the beginning of the movie, but she quickly softens to the girl when she realizes Carrie's mother, Piper Laurie, a fanatically devout Christian, has never informed her of such a huge bodily change. She takes Carrie under her wing, explaining to her what's happening and expressing concern to the principal about Carrie's mother neglecting to tell her own daughter such important information. Though Carrie is still apprehensive and shy, a product of her sheltered raising and cruel mother, Miss Collins approaches her with nothing but nurture and kindness, bringing out a more cheerful and confident side of Carrie that she had likely never experienced before. She's the one who encourages Carrie to accept Tommy Ross, William Catt, prom invitation, also giving her advice on hair and makeup, something her mother never would have done. In a lot of ways, Miss Collins takes on the form of a mother figure in Carrie's life, which makes for one of the best dynamics of the film, and ultimately leads to the most devastating fatality. Miss Collins' fate is different in the book after Carrie and Tommy are crowned prom king and queen. Carrie is basking in the moment, taking in the smiling faces of her peers, and feeling like she's finally being accepted. And then everything quite literally comes crashing down around her when Chris, Nancy Allen, dumps a bucket of pig's blood on her, ruining the happy moment and flipping a switch in Carrie. The pig's blood and the cackling of Norma, PJ Souls, in the audience over the prank is suddenly all too much, and Carrie channels her telekinetic powers to lock everyone inside the gymnasium as she sets it ablaze. Everyone at the prom meets their demise at the hands of Carrie, but most shocking of all is that Miss Collins is also killed by her, despite the relationship they've formed throughout the movie. As she tries to get out with the others, she is suddenly Carrie's main target. Miss Collins cries out her name, pleading with her, but Carrie is unflinching and kills her by pinning her to the wall with the backboard of a basketball net. It's an especially cruel death for a kind character, and she's the most surprising victim of Carrie's carnage, partly because she doesn't die in the book, making her movie death even more upsetting. In the book, Miss Collins is called Miss Desjardins, and is one of the few survivors of the prom. She's also a bit different from her movie counterpart. At the beginning of the book, we learn that Miss Desjardins shares the school's feelings towards Carrie, believing her to be just as overbearing and strange as her mother. But once she witnesses the locker room incident and realizes Carrie's mother hasn't taught her a thing about her body, Miss Desjardins takes pity on the girl and softens to her. She still punishes the girls who tormented Carrie in the locker room and still bans Chris from the prom. But it's at the prom that things take a different turn. When the bucket is dumped upon Carrie, Miss Desjardins laughs along with the crowd, but eventually goes to help her, only to be shoved away by Carrie's telekinetic capabilities. Carrie exits the prom and destroys the school and town as she heads home, leaving Miss Desjardins as one of the only survivors of the tragic night. According to the book, she resigns from teaching shortly after the incident, due to guilt over not doing more to help Carrie. Miss Collins' death adds to the devastation of Carrie. As awful as it is to see Miss Collins die in the movie, especially knowing her fate in the novel is different, it does play into the bigger theme of the film: rage and the uncontrollable nature of it. What likely sealed Miss Collins' fate is when, after the bucket is dumped on Carrie, and we pan to the audience, Carrie hallucinates everyone laughing, including Miss Collins. Now there has been some debate over whether or not Miss Collins laughing is actually a hallucination. Given the trajectory of her relationship with Carrie throughout the movie, and how harsh she is with Carrie's tormentors, it's highly unlikely she is actually laughing at Carrie. But by this point, Carrie has had enough. And once she hears Norm laughing, her mother's words echo in her mind, and she begins to believe that everyone is laughing at her. Seeing the one person she thought she could trust laughing along with them is just too much to bear. Her mind is flipped to revenge mode after the bucket drops, which blinds her from seeing the effects of her actions, and keeps her from rationalizing that Miss Collins isn't laughing at her at all, and is actually just as devastated by the event. After so many years of being tormented by her peers, Carrie snaps, and there is no stopping her, especially not with her added powers. Carrie is a film that can be analyzed in so many ways. Whether you view Carrie as a true villain or as someone pushed too close to the edge and fueled by rage is up to the viewer. But the addition of Miss Collins' death adds to the complication of this dilemma. Miss Collins' death, as heartbreaking as it is, signifies the switch in Carrie as she goes from our sympathetic protagonist to a lethal and vengeful villain. Miss Collins never did anything to wrong Carrie or hurt her in any way, and was the only person who showed her kindness throughout the film. So for Carrie to suddenly turn on her showed just how far gone she was. Carrie killing Miss Collins gives her carnage much more weight, as she suddenly goes from seeking revenge on those who hurt her to killing anyone in the crossfire. Her death strips away all of the moral ambiguity of Carrie's character, leaving us watching in shock and terror as the girl we once rooted for suddenly becomes the monster, and is unstoppable in her quest for revenge. As the book proves, Miss Collins' death wasn't necessary to craft a scary scene, but it was needed to make Carrie's switch feel so impactful. Throughout the movie, we don't see Carrie as anything but meek and quiet, so her sudden switch at the prom is meant to be a huge turning point for her character. Taking out her anger on her student peers felt inevitable, as they had tortured her throughout her life for no reason. However, Miss Collins only approached her with kindness, so Carrie killing her signified that there was no going back, and that as sympathetic a character as she may be, Carrie is still, ultimately, the movie's villain.